So welcome guys to this week's analysis. This week we're going to be kicking things off with gold. Now, if you watched my last week's video or last 2 weeks video, I have been particular about a bearish move on gold. Even on the daily time frame last week, this was what I had to say. Now I can say that price is actually targeting these areas here. Let me even put a line there for easy identification. I'll just put it here so you can see we are still pointing in that direction. Welcome back guys. You can see price has now dropped into the zone I predicted from last week, now giving us something like a head and shoulders pattern that indicates a bearish continuation. As a matter of fact, if we go back to the weekly time frame, I have this zone boxed in and it's made visible on the daily time frame also. It looks like the demand zone that price may be coming into before we continue the bullish trend. Remember, gold, we are still in a complete bullish trend, but price has to pull back for a moment before we continue higher. And around this price region, which is $2,180 is the most likely place price may drop into. But first of all, we have to break below the 2,803 region. So we would like to see something like this, a break below, a retest of that zone, switch over to the lower time frames, and our next target is going to be around 2,174 area. All right, let's go to the 4 hours and look at different probabilities, right? So even though we are bearish, remember the news event came out last week, which was NFP, and that was why we sold off from here. Meanwhile, last week, I specifically said we could either break below before we trade into this low here, or we could come above here before we drop into here. If you doubt me, here was the video. So 2 things I will be expecting going into next week is for price to either take out this zone here. Let me put a line there. So take out this 2,327 area, break below it, go back for a retest before we trade into the downside. And we could also see price still pull back up from here, come back into the zone like I mentioned last week, which is 2,371.328 region before we sell off. So welcome back guys. You can see we actually went into this zone and we dropped into this zone. So going into next week, there are 2 things that may most likely happen. We may come back into this region here, which is 2,324 region, before we continue selling off, or we may just continue lower, break below this 2,280 region, and then continue lower. However, I am more bearish than bullish going into next week. Now, before we go into DXY, so before we continue with our analysis, there's this powerful tool that I use that has been helpful in all my market decision, and I am talking about FastBull. Fastbull.com is the website. So the link is going to be in the description and in the pinned comments down below. So you can download the app or visit the website. Once again, fastbull.com. Now, this is a powerful website. It's more like an all-in-one website. All right. So if you're looking for real-time news events, let's say you are a fundamental trader and a technical trader, Fastbull is the one for you. So if you want real-time news events, you can access it here. Then if you want AI signals, real-time signals with entry, stop loss, and targets, when to get out, you can have them here. Then if you want to look at more events such as why did gold drop significantly before NFP release, you can actually look at those news here. But before we continue with our analysis, what I want to actually talk about here is the economic calendar, because before you start your trading week, you want to observe the fundamentals we have lined up for that week. All right, so this is Saturday and this is what we have lined up today, but we're looking at next week, right? So now I'll go to Monday. So under Monday, these are the fundamentals we have lined up. As you can see, we have the JPY fundamentals lined up on Monday and all of that. But I'm going to go to Wednesday, because on Wednesday, we have the biggest news event for next week. So what I want to look at is the US CPI news events. Now, so like you already know, we have medium impact news events, we have high impact news events, and we have low impact news events. Now, when you see 1 star, that's a low impact news event. When we see double stars, that's a medium impact news. And then when you see these 3-star events, those are medium impact news events. So you can always fine-tune these by coming to screen. So personally for me, I like to focus on high impact news events. So I'm just going to click on screen, come to more, and then I'm going to uncheck this other news events and then leave just the most important ones, the high impact news events, and click on confirm. So as you can see, on Wednesday, we have only the high impact news events lined up, and we have the US CPI. So going into next week, the US CPI is going to set the tone of the market. And keep an eye on your economic calendar on Fastbull. Come to economic calendar to be able to see what we have lined up for next week. Now let's go back to our analysis and talk about DXY. Now on DXY, if you've been following my analysis for the past couple of weeks, remember when price dropped into this region about 3 weeks ago, I was particular that we are still in an uptrend, right? We have a high, a higher low, a new higher high. So until we have a weekly candlestick break below this trend line and closes below this zone that has been tested multiple times, right? Until we have a weekly candlestick break and close below that zone, we are still bullish. But if we have a weekly candlestick break and close below that zone, then we can trade to the downside. And as you can see, yes, we moved sideways for a bit, we ranged for a bit, and now after an NFP last week, we saw this massive bullish engulfing candle. So until we close below this zone, I am still bullish, and my target still remains 107.091. Now if we go to the daily time frame, you can see we are actually rejecting this demand zone here. Price has rejected that zone multiple times historically, and when NFP came out, we still rejected that zone to the upside. Now for us to establish the fact that price is going to continue bullish, I would like to see a break above, which should create a new higher high. Then we switch over to a much lower time frame for the retest, and then we should expect price to jump to the upside. Then on the 4-hour time frame, well, because of the NFP impulsive move to the upside, we may not have enough momentum to just break above there, you know, and then come back for the retest before we continue higher. So we may want to pull back. But now we want to be able to identify where the pullback may most likely come into before we continue bullish. And that is why I have this region here on the 4-hour time frame. And I also have my Fibonacci retracement tool plotted out, so which aligns with the 0.5, 0.6 Fib level, which is the golden zone. So I like to see price pull back into that zone before we take off. All right. So one of two things: we can either break above, come back for a retest and continue higher, or we could pull back into this region before we find enough momentum to continue pushing higher. All right, so that is my bias on DXY. I am more bullish than bearish on DXY. Now the next on my list is GBPUSD. Don't mind my messy chart right now. I made a detailed analysis on GBPUSD last week. All right, and you can go back and watch that video. Time will not permit me. Last week's video was too lengthy. Many people didn't like it because we got lesser views. So I'm going to try to keep this as short and brief as possible. So I'm going to look at the daily time frame. Now, I didn't spot this in last week's analysis, but I did during the midweek analysis. That is why it is very important to join our Telegram channel, because we hold at least one live session on the Telegram channel every week. Now, I actually pinpointed this out on the Telegram live last week. So as you can see, price bounced off the third touch of this trend line, and I specifically said in that video that let's see what NFP does. Now NFP may most likely reject that zone because it is a strong zone. Price has rejected those zones massively previously, right, historically. Now no wonder we bounced off that zone on GBPUSD, and now we are pointing downward. Now going into next week, I am more bearish than bullish. I'm just going to delay this lower trend line and delay this other bias from last week. All right, so however, we have this area to contend with. So let's say we kick off next week and price wants to initially make a pullback before we continue bearish. So I'd like to see price pull back into this region. All right, this would be a good place to catch a trade. Let's say on the 15 minutes time frame, 30 minutes time frame, or 1 hour, you want to catch a trade here before you sell into here, and then a break below here before we make our way down into 1.2643. all right, and then before we continue into lower areas if price is actually committed to trading downward. I mean, on the DXY, by that time we must have created that new higher high I was talking about, and we should see this bearish push on GBP USD. But Going into next week, I want to either see price continue lower, break below the 1.26964 area, give it a retest before continue lower, or if we see an initial bullish push, then I'd like to see price come into these areas here, which is between the 1.27544 and 1.27657 region before we continue lower. But either way, I am more bearish than bullish on GBPUSD going into next week. Now, next on my list is euro dollar. All right, so euro dollar, obviously you can see the impulsive move to the downside after the news release. So euro dollar, if we continue, if let's say, because price is currently trading at this zone now, so we may see price repel this zone, maybe first of all go bullish when we kick off next week. Well, just like I did on DXY, I would like to see price pull back into certain areas of value, maybe around here. Let me see if there's any Fibonacci retracement level that aligns with that zone. Well, it looks far, but well, let's see how it goes. So just like I did, look at that level I plotted, that 4-hour level I plotted on the DXY. So use that as your analysis to better time your euro dollar entry, since they are very much correlated in a way, right? So if DXY is bullish, euro USD will be bearish. If euro USD is bullish, DXY will be bearish. So if we continue higher initially for next week, I would like to see price come into this 1.0837 area before we sell off. All right. And if price continues lower without going for that pullback, then I'd like to see price break below this region here, which is 1.07867 region. So break properly below it, come back for a retest. This time we want to switch to a much lower time frame and catch an entry into this most obvious zone here. That will be our first target. So second target will be 1.06523. All right. That's if price breaks below there, come back for a retest, then we are going to continue lower. So that is my bias for next week on euro dollar. Now, next on my list is US oil. So US oil, I would like to go to the daily time frame on this one. Time will not permit me. I did an in-depth analysis on our Telegram live session last week on this, but I'm just going to quickly go through it here. So price created a low, a lower high, a new lower low, a new lower high, a new lower low. So of course, at some point, I want to see price come into this area so that we create a new lower high before we continue lower. As a matter of fact, if we go to the 4-hour time frame, we have a supply level around that zone on the 4-hour time frame, which is around these regions here. All right. So if you want to swing trade this, you want to see price come into this area, then your stop loss can be above this zone. Then our target would be all the way down here, which is 68.08 level. All right. So that is my bias on US oil. Then EURJPY would be the last on my list. So many people have been asking me to analyze the JPY pairs, but right now they are trading at key levels. I want to give it time to see how price react to that zone. I mean, if we go to the weekly time frame on EURJPY, for instance, you will see that is a strong zone because price has significantly bounced off that zone historically, and that is why we are stalling around there right now. So are we going to do this? Or are we going to do this? We don't know. But let's go to a much lower time frame and see how we can take advantage of this. So on the daily time frame, I have this trend line. So if you look at the weekly time frame, anyways, price closed with a solid bearish engulfing candle. But even though we want to go bearish, since we are in a complete bullish trend, it is not advisable to just dial into the bearish side of things. So, but even if price is going to continue bearish, we may just tap into this trend line that has been tested multiple times historically, and then we may continue higher, breaking above this zone. All right. So if that happens, I mean, when we create a new higher high, you know how I like to look at the market. You want to expect a pullback into that area, then switch to a much lower time frame, catch an entry, and continue trading higher. All right. But if price breaks below that zone, I want you, because price is too bullish, because if price breaks below this zone, it may just come and tap into this zone and still continue bullish. All right. So, but for you to be maybe kind of rest assured that at least we are going to be a little bit bearish for a while, then you want to wait for price to take out this 163.804 level. So take it out properly, come back to that area for a retest before you catch a trade with your stop loss above. Then want to trade into this obvious lows here, which is 153.247, maybe before price continues bullish again, considering the fact that we are in a complete bullish trend. But for now, I am more bullish than bearish. Maybe price coming to this zone, tap into this trend line on this daily time frame. When it is approaching it, you want to go to a much lower time frame like the 4 hour, 1 hour, 15 minutes to look for candlestick behaviors, price patterns, chart patterns to be able to capitalize on the continuous bullish push. So even though price doesn't go bullish, if you can capitalize on this on the much lower time frame, you will still catch your you can capitalize on this on a much lower time frame. You will still get your 2 to 1, 3 to 1, even though price doesn't continue higher. So guys, that is that for this week's analysis. You know what to do. If you are yet to subscribe, please do so. I appreciate those that left comments in last week's video. Last week's video's comment section was fire, and I appreciate every one of you. So please do the same in this video. If you have any comments, whether you agree or you disagree with anything I have said, just put it in the comment section constructively. And I wish you a successful trading week ahead, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye, guys.